In the 19th century, cocaine tampons were a thing. Toward the end of the 19th century, cocaine was regarded as a valid treatment for gynecological illnesses, so women were prescribed cocaine tampons. Catherine the Great had an interesting love life, filled with many courtiers. She even appointed official foot ticklers who would pleasure her by tickling her feet while telling salacious stories or singing songs. The Borgia family, notorious for their corrupt influence during the Renaissance, indulged in various immoral acts. Pope Alexander VI, a Borgia patriarch, reportedly held orgies in the Vatican and fathered several illegitimate children. Arthur C. Whitaker, the mayor of Bridgeton, New Jersey, during the 1910s, had a unique approach to discipline. He had an automated spanking machine installed at City Hall and sentenced young offenders to it instead of sending them to reformatory schools. Cleopatra, the last pharaoh of Egypt, was known for her intelligence, beauty, and political acumen, but she was also infamous for her unusual seduction methods. Legend has it that Cleopatra used a special love potion made from crocodile dung and honey. This concoction was believed to enhance sexual prowess and was used to seduce powerful men, including Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. The mixture was applied to her body as a perfume, its pungent odor masked by exotic spices. Cleopatra's allure was so potent that both men and women were captivated by her, and she used this to solidify her power. Although the effectiveness of her love potion is questionable, Cleopatra's seductive reputation lives on. Casanova's condom. Giacomo Casanova, the legendary Italian lover, was known for his many romantic escapades. However, he was also one of the earliest advocates of safe sex. Casanova often used condoms, which at the time were made from sheep intestines and tied with a ribbon at the base. He would meticulously wash and reuse them, storing his protection in a small, ornate case. These early condoms were far from foolproof, but they were Casanova's way of avoiding unwanted pregnancies and sexually transmitted infections. His carefulness with contraception shows that even in the 18th century, some people were thinking ahead about the consequences of their passionate encounters. The Romans were known for their grand feasts and elaborate social gatherings, but some of their parties took a dark and lascivious turn. Roman orgies were infamous, often involving excessive drinking, indulgent eating, and uninhibited sexual activities. These events were not just for pleasure, but also served as displays of power and wealth. Attendees ranged from slaves to the elite, all participating in the debauchery. The Emperor Nero was particularly notorious for hosting such events, where anything and everything was permissible. The orgies symbolized the excess and moral decay of the Roman Empire, offering a stark contrast to its image as a bastion of civilization. The Victorian era was known for its prudish attitudes towards sex, yet it also saw the invention of bizarre devices meant to curb sexual desires, particularly masturbation. For men, this included metal rings with sharp teeth that would cause pain if an erection occurred. For women, chastity belts with intricate locks were used to prevent any form of sexual stimulation. These devices were thought to maintain purity and prevent the so-called moral decay associated with masturbation. Ironically, the era's obsession with repressing sexual urges only led to the creation of more inventive and often cruel methods of control, highlighting the complexities of Victorian sexuality. Catherine de Médicis' dildo. Catherine de Médicis, the Queen of France in the 16th century, had a secret to maintaining her sexual satisfaction. Despite being married to Henry II, Catherine was rumored to have used a dildo made of ivory and leather. This device, known as a go de miché, was imported from Italy and was a closely guarded secret in the French court. Catherine's use of such a device reflects the lengths to which even royalty would go to satisfy their desires discreetly. The existence of such items also suggests that sexual aids have been around for centuries, even if their use was shrouded in secrecy. King Edward II's love chair. King Edward VII of England, known as Bertie, was infamous for his voracious sexual appetite. He frequented high-class brothels and had numerous mistresses. To accommodate his large frame and enhance his sexual experiences, Edward commissioned a custom-made love chair that allowed him to engage in sexual activities without exerting too much effort. The chair, designed by a French craftsman, featured various supports and straps, making it a versatile piece of furniture for the king's many encounters. Edward's love chair became a symbol of his decadent lifestyle, embodying the excesses of the British aristocracy during the late 19th century. In medieval Europe, love potions were a popular but dangerous way to attract a lover. These potions often contained ingredients like menstrual blood, ground animal bones, and herbs believed to have aphrodisiac properties. Women would secretly add these concoctions to a man's food or drink, hoping to win his affection. However, these potions were not without risks. They could cause severe illness or even death if improperly prepared. Despite the potential dangers, love potions were a testament to the lengths people would go to for love, reflecting the superstitions and desperate desires of the time. Marie Antoinette's erotic library. Marie Antoinette, the last queen of France before the Revolution, was known for her lavish lifestyle, but few knew about her private collection of erotic literature. Hidden within the walls of her private chambers was a small library filled with books that explored various sexual themes and fantasies. These books, considered scandalous at the time, were a secret indulgence for the queen, who was otherwise trapped in the rigid protocols of the French court. Marie Antoinette's collection reveals a side of her that contrasted sharply with her public image, offering a glimpse into the hidden desires of one of history's most famous queens. Ancient Greek pederasty. In ancient Greece, pederasty was a socially accepted practice where adult men formed erotic relationships with adolescent boys. These relationships were often seen as educational, with the older man mentoring the younger in the ways of the world, including sexual matters. While it might seem shocking by today's standards, pederasty was woven into the fabric of Greek society, influencing art, literature, and philosophy. The practice was not without its critics, even in ancient times, but it persisted as a norm in many Greek city-states, highlighting the vastly different sexual mores of the ancient world. Victorian-era brothels. During the Victorian era, while public morality was rigidly enforced, brothels flourished in cities like London. These establishments catered to all social classes, from the poor to the aristocracy. Some brothels were infamous for their themed rooms, where clients could indulge in various fetishes and fantasies. Despite the outward appearance of propriety, Victorian society had a hidden underworld of sexual exploration. The contrast between public morality and private vice was stark, as the same men who preached about family values were often the most frequent visitors to these houses of ill repute. The infamous Hellfire Club. In 18th century England, the Hellfire Club was a secret society of elite men who indulged in debauchery and blasphemy. Founded by Sir Francis Dashwood, the club held meetings in an underground cave system where members would engage in orgies, mock religious rituals, and drink heavily. Women, often referred to as nuns, were brought in to participate in these wild events. The Hellfire Club was notorious for its outrageous behavior, and while it eventually disbanded, its legacy of libertinism and scandal remains a dark chapter in the history of British aristocracy. Pompeii's erotic art. When the ancient city of Pompeii was excavated, archaeologists were shocked to discover explicit erotic art on the walls of homes and public buildings. These images depicted various sexual acts, some involving mythological figures, others just everyday people. In addition to the art, numerous phallic symbols were found, often used as good luck charms or decorations. The people of Pompeii had a remarkably open attitude towards sex, viewing it as a natural part of life. The discovery of this art challenged modern perceptions of ancient societies, revealing a culture far more permissive than previously thought. The syphilis outbreak in Renaissance Europe. During the Renaissance, Europe was ravaged by a syphilis outbreak that was believed to have been brought back by Christopher Columbus's crew from the New World. The disease spread rapidly, especially among the upper classes who were notorious for their promiscuity. Treatments for syphilis were as dangerous as the disease itself, often involving mercury, which led to severe poisoning. The outbreak became so widespread that it influenced art, literature, and even fashion, as people tried to hide the disfiguring symptoms. Syphilis became known as the Great Pox, a reminder of the dangers of unchecked sexual behavior in an era of exploration and excess. Emperor Nero's public sex shows. Roman Emperor Nero was infamous for his cruelty and decadence, but few acts were as shocking as his public sex shows. Nero would forcefully recruit men and women, both free and enslaved, to participate in these staged performances, which he often joined. These events were held in public venues, where the audience would watch as Nero and his participants engaged in acts that were both explicit and humiliating. Nero's reign is remembered as one of the most morally corrupt in Roman history, with his public displays of sexual excess symbolizing the empire's broader decline. The Georgian era's prostitution boom. In 18th century England, particularly in London, prostitution became a booming industry. The Georgian era was marked by a stark divide between rich and poor, with many women turning to sex work out of economic necessity. Brothels ranged from luxurious establishments for the wealthy to grim street corners for the destitute. The Covent Garden Ladies, a directory of prostitutes, was published and widely read by men seeking the services of these women. The proliferation of prostitution in this period reflected the social inequalities of the time, as well as the hypocrisy of a society that publicly condemned but privately indulged in vice. Rasputin's sexual mysticism. Grigory Rasputin, the Russian mystic who gained immense influence over Tsar Nicholas II's family, was known for his debauched lifestyle. Despite his holy image, Rasputin believed that to be truly close to God, one had to first sin, and he indulged in excessive drinking and promiscuity. He was rumored to have had sexual relations with many women, including members of the Russian nobility. Rasputin's sexual exploits were as legendary as his mysticism, and they contributed to his downfall. His belief that carnal sin brought him closer to purity created a strange contradiction in the man revered and reviled by so many. Marquis de Sade's prison orgies. The Marquis de Sade, from whom the term sadism is derived, was infamous for his sexual perversions and violent fantasies. While imprisoned in the Bastille, Sade organized orgies with other inmates, using whatever means he could to satisfy his twisted desires. He wrote numerous explicit novels while in prison, exploring themes of extreme violence and sexual dominance. His libertine philosophy, which embraced cruelty and excess, shocked his contemporaries and led to his repeated imprisonment. The Marquis's life was a testament to the darker side of human nature, with his writings and actions leaving a notorious legacy in the history of erotic literature. Pope Joan, the female pope myth. In the 9th century, a scandalous story emerged about Pope Joan, a woman who allegedly disguised herself as a man and became pope. According to the legend, she was extremely intelligent and well-versed in theology, rising through the ranks of the church. However, her secret was revealed when she became pregnant and gave birth during a public procession. Although historians dispute the veracity of this tale, it became a symbol of the church's strict gender roles and the risks women faced if they tried to challenge them. The story of Pope Joan remains one of the most salacious myths in church history. Japanese pillow books. In ancient Japan, aristocrats kept pillow books, which were illustrated manuals of sexual positions and techniques. These books were often given to newlyweds as instructional guides for their wedding night. The art depicted in these books was explicit, showing a wide variety of sexual activities, sometimes accompanied by humorous or erotic poetry. Pillow books were considered a private pleasure, shared between lovers or used as inspiration for intimate moments. While these texts are seen today as a reflection of Japan's cultural openness toward sexuality, they were also an expression of creativity and intimacy in ancient Japanese society. Queen Victoria's libido. Despite her public image as a prim and proper monarch, Queen Victoria had a healthy sexual appetite. She was deeply in love with her husband, Prince Albert, and the two were known to be very passionate. Victoria even kept detailed diaries about their intimate life, writing about how much she enjoyed their encounters. After Albert's death, Victoria mourned him deeply, and though she never remarried, she reportedly kept a plaster cast of his hand and a lock of his hair as tokens of their love. Her private passion stands in stark contrast to the prudish reputation of the Victorian era. The sex Olympians of ancient Greece. The ancient Greeks were known for their open attitudes towards sex, but few things were as competitive as their sexual prowess. Wealthy Greek men would sometimes host private games similar to the Olympics, but with a twist. These games involved erotic contests. Participants would engage in sexual endurance challenges, where the goal was to see who could perform the longest or the most creatively in bed. Winners of these contests were lavished with gifts and celebrated as heroes of pleasure. While not widely documented, these erotic games reflect how deeply intertwined sex and competition were in ancient Greek culture. The preacher's passion for porn. In the 17th century, Reverend Robert Irvine of England shocked his congregation by being caught with an extensive collection of erotic art. Irvine, a fiery preacher known for his sermons about the sins of lust, secretly indulged in the very vice he condemned. His collection included scandalous engravings of sexual acts, which were extremely rare and expensive at the time. When his collection was discovered, it caused a scandal that rocked his small community. The hypocrisy of the preacher was a reflection of the often hidden desires that even the most pious could not escape, revealing the complexity of human sexuality. The French court's cuckold parties. In 18th century France, the court of Louis XV was notorious for its debauchery. One particular form of entertainment was the cuckold party, where noblemen would deliberately engage in extramarital affairs in front of their peers. These parties involved games and wagers, with courtiers placing bets on who would be caught in the act first. The king himself was rumored to have participated in these events, which were considered a way to flaunt power and status. The French aristocracy's shameless indulgence in such affairs contributed to the public's growing resentment, which eventually led to the French Revolution. Masturbation madness. In the 18th and 19th centuries, masturbation was viewed as a dangerous and immoral act. Doctors and moralists believed that it could lead to madness, physical decay, and even death. Some parents went to extreme lengths to prevent their children from engaging in self-pleasure, using painful devices like spiked rings or chastity belts. Kellogg's cornflakes were even invented as a bland food to reduce sexual desire. The hysteria surrounding masturbation was largely driven by religious and social anxieties about controlling human sexuality, reflecting the deep fear of sexual autonomy in a repressive society.
Deep in the isolated wilderness of Alaska, there exists a forgotten tribe shrouded in mystery. This tribe is known for their gruesome appearance, almost human, but with haunting differences that set them apart. Their bodies possess strange features, webbed hands with claw-like fingers and mouths filled with razor-sharp teeth. Legends say these cannibalistic beings dwell in dark, cold caverns, hidden away from the eyes of the world. Around ancient fires they gather, their hollow eyes dancing with the light as they consume the flesh of the unfortunate. The tribe conducts rituals that send chills down the spine. Their chants echo amid the endless night. Encounters with these beings are rare, as most who stumble upon them never return to tell their tale. Their existence remains a terrifying enigma, hidden away in the desolate expanse of the Alaskan wilderness.
Did you know Abraham Lincoln is in the Wrestling Hall of Fame? The 64 inches president had only one loss among his around 300 contests. He earned a reputation for this in New Salem, Illinois, as an elite fighter.
Eleanor of Aquitaine was no ordinary queen. She was a force to be reckoned with, a woman who defied the expectations of her time and stood up to kings. Born into one of the most powerful families in Europe, Eleanor became the Duchess of Aquitaine in her own right, making her one of the wealthiest and most influential women of the 12th century. Her life took a dramatic turn when she married King Louis VII of France, becoming Queen of France. However, Eleanor was not content to play a passive role. She accompanied Louis on the Second Crusade, demonstrating her strength and determination. Despite their powerful union, the marriage was annulled, partly due to Eleanor's failure to produce a male heir, but also because of their growing differences. Eleanor's story didn't end there. Soon after, she married Henry II of England, bringing her vast lands of Aquitaine under English control. As Queen of England, Eleanor wielded considerable power and was instrumental in the administration of the kingdom. However, her relationship with Henry soured, leading to one of the most famous acts of defiance in medieval history. Eleanor supported her sons in a revolt against their father. For this, she was imprisoned for over a decade.
After completing his second term as the first president of the United States, George Washington retired to his beloved estate, Mount Vernon, in 1797. While Washington was known primarily as a statesman and military leader, his post-presidential years saw him venture into an unexpected and highly successful business, whiskey distillation. Encouraged by his Scottish farm manager, James Anderson, Washington established a distillery on his plantation. Anderson, who had experience in distilling, convinced Washington that whiskey production could be a lucrative addition to his agricultural operations. By 1799, the Mount Vernon distillery had grown to be one of the largest in the country, producing an impressive 11,000 gallons of unaged whiskey annually. Washington's distillery was not just a small operation. It employed skilled laborers and utilized advanced techniques for the time. The whiskey was sold both locally and to distant markets, contributing significantly to Washington's wealth in his later years. Washington's foray into whiskey production reveals his adaptability and keen business sense, showcasing a lesser-known but fascinating aspect of his life after the presidency. On June 18, 1815, two of history's greatest military minds met on the battlefield of Waterloo. Napoleon Bonaparte, the French emperor, and the Duke of Wellington, leader of the British forces. Napoleon, renowned for his brilliance in warfare, returned from exile with ambitions to reclaim his empire. Wellington, a cool and disciplined strategist, was determined to stop him. The battlefield, chosen by Wellington for its defensive advantages, was soaked from the night's rain, delaying Napoleon's attack and giving the British crucial time to prepare. The battle was intense, with Napoleon throwing wave after wave of troops at Wellington's lines, particularly targeting key positions like La Haye-Sainte. Despite fierce assaults, Wellington's forces held their ground. He knew his survival depended on one thing: waiting for the arrival of the Prussian army led by Marshal Blucher. With Wellington's forces pressing forward and the Prussians arriving, the French lines crumbled. Waterloo marked the end of an era, with Wellington's victory sealing Napoleon's fate and reshaping Europe's future.
For nearly 3 decades, the Berlin Wall stood as a symbol of division between East and West Berlin. Constructed in 1961 by the German Democratic Republic, it was meant to halt the mass defections from east to west. Families were separated, lives were torn apart, and freedom seemed a distant dream for many. But change was on the horizon as peaceful protests began to surge in 1989. On November 9, 1989, an announcement lifted the Iron Curtain, allowing free passage between East and West. Citizens from both sides celebrated, tearing down the wall with their own hands, piece by piece. The fall of the Berlin Wall marked the end of an era and the beginning of a new chapter of unity and freedom. In 1386, a bizarre and now almost unbelievable event took place in France. A pig was put on trial and executed. During the Middle Ages, this pig had attacked a child who later died from the injuries. In a time when animals were sometimes subject to the same laws as humans, this pig was arrested and held in prison just like any other criminal. The pig was brought before a court where it stood trial for murder. The legal proceedings were taken seriously, with the pig being assigned a defense attorney and a full trial taking place. Ultimately, the pig was found guilty of the crime and sentenced to death. The execution was carried out by hanging, just as it would have been for a human found guilty of such a crime. This peculiar event highlights the strange and superstitious nature of medieval justice, where animals were sometimes held accountable for their actions in the same way as people. Cleopatra wasn't actually Egyptian. As far as historians can tell, Egypt's famous femme fatale was actually Greek. She was a descendant of Alexander the Great's Macedonian general Ptolemy. Ptolemy was one of Alexander's trusted companions and generals. Cleopatra's forebears ruled Egypt but remained culturally Greek. She was renowned for her intellect and political savvy. Cleopatra's legacy continues to fascinate us to this day. Pompeii was once a thriving ancient Roman city near the Bay of Naples. Its inhabitants enjoyed a rich daily life, complete with luxurious homes and vibrant markets. But in 79 AD, Mount Vesuvius erupted with little warning. The eruption buried Pompeii under a thick layer of volcanic ash, preserving it in a moment of time. Centuries later, excavations unearthed the city's remarkably preserved ruins. Artifacts provide invaluable insights into the lives of ancient Romans. Today, the ruins of Pompeii stand as a poignant reminder of nature's power and ancient human life.
Ever wondered how ancient Greeks kept clean? Let's dive in. While some used sponges, most relied on stones for hygiene. Did you know athletes sold their sweat as a remedy? Crazy, right? People believed it eased aches and pains. Spoiler, it probably didn't. But it wasn't all fun. Slaves faced harsh realities like infibulation. This painful practice sealed them shut, making life even tougher. Ancient Greece had its quirks. What do you think about this?
The Bloody Mary, a staple of brunch menus worldwide, wasn't always known by its now famous name. This iconic cocktail, known for its bold mix of vodka, tomato juice, and spices, originally went by a far more gruesome title, a bucket of blood. The name was likely a nod to the drink's deep red color, but it certainly wasn't the most appealing moniker for a cocktail. As the drink evolved and gained popularity, its name changed as well. After a bucket of blood, the cocktail was renamed Red Snapper, a name that hinted at its sharp and spicy flavor profile. However, this name didn't stick for long, and the drink eventually became known as the Bloody Mary, the name we all recognize today. The final name is thought to be a reference to either Queen Mary I of England, who was notorious for her bloody reign, or a nod to a waitress named Mary who worked at the Bucket of Blood bar. Whatever its origins, the Bloody Mary has become a beloved classic, far removed from its initial, much less appetizing name. In the heart of ancient Rome, the spectacle of gladiatorial combat was a thrilling form of entertainment. While male gladiators were common, female gladiators, known as gladiatresses, were incredibly rare. These fierce women captivated the audience with their bravery and combat skills. Training for a gladiatrix was rigorous, demanding both physical strength and mental fortitude. Despite their limited numbers, gladiatresses were a topic of great interest among Roman nobles. Before the fight, the tension was palpable as these warriors prepared for the ultimate test. Today, artifacts and historical records help us remember the bravery of these extraordinary women. Their legacy lives on, a testament to their courage and resilience in the brutal arenas of ancient Rome.
During the Great Depression, resourcefulness became a necessity, leading to a unique trend in clothing. With money scarce and fabric hard to come by, people began making clothes out of food sacks. Flour bags, potato sacks, and anything made from burlap were repurposed into dresses, shirts, and other garments. What started as a desperate measure soon turned into a widespread practice. As food distributors noticed this trend, they decided to help by making their sacks more colorful and decorative. They began printing vibrant patterns and designs on the sacks, allowing people to create clothing that was not only functional but also a bit fashionable. This small gesture brought a touch of dignity and creativity to the challenging lives of many during that era. This innovative use of everyday materials is a testament to the resilience and ingenuity of people facing hard times, showing how even in the toughest situations, a bit of creativity can make life just a little brighter.
In 1932, Australia faced an unexpected foe, emus. After World War I, Australian soldiers were given farmland, but they soon found themselves overrun by tens of thousands of emus that migrated inland. The emus destroyed crops, so the government declared war on the birds. Armed with machine guns, soldiers tried to cull the emu population. But the emus were surprisingly crafty, dodging bullets and outrunning the soldiers. After several failed attempts and wasted ammunition, the government admitted defeat. The emus had won. This strange chapter in history became known as the Great Emu War, a quirky reminder that sometimes, even with all the firepower, nature has the upper hand. In 1923, the small town of Burlington, Iowa, found itself in a bit of a pickle, literally. A huge jar of pickles, weighing over a ton, was sent to the town as part of a quirky publicity stunt by a local pickle company. The idea was to get the town's mayor to open the giant jar in front of a crowd, but there was just one problem. Nobody could figure out how to open it. The jar was so enormous and tightly sealed that it took several hours, numerous tools, and a lot of elbow grease to finally pop it open. When they finally managed to do it, the crowd cheered as if they had just witnessed a great victory. And what did the town do with all those pickles? They hosted the biggest pickle-eating contest Burlington had ever seen. It was a day that went down in history as the Great Pickle Fiasco and became a hilarious legend that the locals still talk about today. Imagine waking up to a world where the air is so thick with pollution that you can barely see your own hand in front of you. This was the reality for Londoners in December 1952 during the Great Smog, a catastrophic event that would forever change environmental policy. The smog was a result of a perfect storm, a cold weather front, high-pressure systems, and the burning of coal for heating. The city, still recovering from World War II, relied heavily on coal-burning power plants and domestic fires, leading to a toxic cocktail of smoke and fog. For 5 days from December 5th to 9th, 1952, the smog lingered, causing chaos as transportation ground to a halt and visibility dropped to a few feet. Tragically, this environmental disaster claimed the lives of thousands, with estimates around 12,000 deaths attributed to respiratory and cardiovascular issues exacerbated by the polluted air. The Great Smog prompted the British government to take decisive action, leading to the Clean Air Act of 1956, which aimed to reduce air pollution in urban areas. This event serves as a grim reminder of the consequences of neglecting environmental health and the importance of sustainable practices today. Imagine waking up. Richard the Lionheart is often remembered as one of the most badass kings in England's history. Known for his incredible bravery and military prowess, Richard I, as he was officially titled, earned the nickname Lionheart because of his fearlessness and warrior spirit. Richard ascended to the throne in 1189, but unlike most kings, he spent very little time in England during his reign. Instead, he was constantly on the battlefield, leading his troops in the Third Crusade, where he fought against the famous Muslim leader, Saladin. Richard's reputation as a fearless and formidable warrior spread far and wide, and he became a legendary figure in both European and Middle Eastern history. Despite being king, Richard was more interested in combat than in ruling. He was known to lead his men from the front, participating directly in battles and skirmishes. His leadership and military skill were unmatched, and he was highly respected by both his allies and enemies. Richard's legacy as the Lionheart continues to be celebrated, symbolizing the ideal of the courageous, chivalrous warrior king.
The world's most successful pirate in history was a lady named Qing Shi. She was a prostitute in China until the commander of the Red Flag Fleet bought and married her. But her husband considered her his equal, and she became an active pirate commander in the fleet. With her leadership, the Red Flag Fleet grew to over 300 ships and 20,000 pirates. She controlled the waters from the South China Sea to the coast of Vietnam and Korea. She was known for her strict code of law and brutal enforcement. Qing Shi retired in her later years with great wealth and lived to see old age. Her legacy remains one of the greatest pirate stories ever told.
Ever wondered how Mary, Queen of Scots, met her tragic end? Mary was imprisoned for 19 years, plotting her escape. Her execution was planned to be swift and dignified. But on the day, things went horribly wrong. The executioner fumbled, leading to a gruesome spectacle. Mary's final moments were filled with courage and defiance. Her legacy lives on, a tale of tragedy and intrigue.
President Zachary Taylor's death in 1850 has long been the subject of intrigue and speculation, with one of the most curious theories being that he died from a cherry overdose. On July 4th of that year, Taylor attended a holiday celebration where he indulged in a large quantity of cherries and washed them down with cold milk. Shortly after, he fell seriously ill with severe gastroenteritis, which led to his untimely death just 5 days later on July 9th. The prevailing theory is that the combination of the cherry's acidic content and the milk caused a fatal digestive issue. While medical science has evolved since then, and we now know that such a combination is unlikely to be deadly by today's standards, the incident highlights the limited medical understanding of the time. Taylor's sudden death led to widespread rumors and even conspiracy theories, with some suggesting he was poisoned. However, modern forensic analysis has largely debunked this, leaving the unusual story of a cherry overdose as the most enduring explanation. This strange chapter in American history reminds us of the fragility of life and the sometimes bizarre ways in which history unfolds. The mystery of the lost colony of Roanoke is one of the oldest and most enduring mysteries in American history. In 1587, a group of over 100 English settlers, led by John White, established a colony on Roanoke Island, off the coast of what is now North Carolina. White returned to England later that year to gather supplies, but his return to Roanoke was delayed by war with Spain. When he finally made it back in 1590, the colony had vanished without a trace. The only clue left behind was the word Croatoan, carved into a wooden post, and the letters Crow etched into a tree. Some theories suggest they were absorbed into local Native American tribes, while others believe they tried to sail back to England and were lost at sea. The true fate of the Roanoke colonists remains a mystery, making it one of the most intriguing and unsolved puzzles in early American history.
The tragic story of Medusa and Poseidon begins in the sacred temple of Athena. Medusa, once a stunning maiden with golden hair, was a priestess dedicated to serving Athena. Poseidon, the god of the sea, was captivated by Medusa's beauty and desire. In a moment of passion, Poseidon pursued Medusa within the holy confines of the temple. Athena, enraged by the desecration of her temple, decided to punish Medusa. She transformed Medusa into a gorgon, with snakes for hair and a gaze that turned men to stone. Cursed and exiled, Medusa lived out her days in isolation, a tragic figure in Greek mythology.
During the infamous Salem witch trials of 1692, a dark chapter in American history, the fear of witchcraft led to widespread hysteria and the persecution of many innocent people. Contrary to popular belief, however, none of the accused witches in Salem were burned at the stake. In Salem, the accused were subjected to harsh imprisonment, intense interrogation, and in some cases brutal trials. Out of the 2,000 people accused, most were jailed under terrible conditions, awaiting their fate. Ultimately, 19 people were hanged, and one man, Giles Corey, was pressed to death with heavy stones for refusing to enter a plea. But none of the accused were burned alive, as is often mistakenly thought. The Salem witch trials stand as a stark reminder of the dangers of mass hysteria and the importance of due process. Though many lives were tragically lost, the true story reveals a more complex and sobering reality than the sensationalized tales of witches being burned at the stake. During World War II, a Great Dane named Juliana became a hero. Juliana was awarded the Blue Cross Medal for her incredible bravery. She extinguished an incendiary bomb by peeing on it. In doing so, she saved her home and possibly many lives. For her act of bravery, Juliana was awarded the prestigious Blue Cross Medal. She became a local legend and a beacon of courage. Her story remains a touching reminder of the bravery found in the most unexpected places. Don't forget to share this incredible story of Juliana, the heroic Great Dane.
In the early 20th century, a fierce battle was waged in Britain as women fought for the right to vote. Among the most notable figures was Emmeline Pankhurst, who founded the Women's Social and Political Union in 1903. This group employed bold tactics, including marches and hunger strikes, to draw attention to their cause. The suffragettes faced fierce opposition, often being arrested and treated harshly. Their efforts culminated in the Representation of the People Act, 1918, which granted voting rights to women over the age of 30. This milestone was a testament to their relentless spirit and determination, paving the way for future generations to fight for equality and justice.